Less than 24 hours, Georgians will be under a shelter-in-place order.
McDonald, though, said he did not know the man was handcuffed and was trying to use his foot to pin him to the ground so he could be handcuffed.
If your friends, neighbors, or local organizations are not complying, report them to us.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. My name is Jake Green. Thank y'all for tuning in today. We've got a good one for you. Today, we are going to be focusing on homeschooling and educating your children outside of the public school system. We have a very special guest, Miss Meredith Hazel. She is the wife of Shane Hazel, who was our gubernatorial candidate a couple years ago, right? 2 years ago? Yeah, 2022. So yeah, we had a great conversation. It's a pre-recorded interview, so it will not be live. However, yeah, fantastic conversation. So make sure you stick around. Before we get to that, if you have any questions about the Libertarian Party of Georgia or what we're doing around the state to help spread freedom and liberty, go to lpgeorgia.com or go hit us up on Twitter, X, goodness gracious, I'm never going to get used to that, at lpgeorgia. On the website, you can see a whole bunch of stuff, including our platform, headlines, affiliates, bylaws. What is a libertarian? You can take the world's smallest political quiz to tell you where you are on the map of politics. You can sign up for things like Liberty Watch, which will tell you all the legislation that is coming through the state of Georgia that may or may not be passed, but you get to keep your eye on it and see how it would affect you if it did get passed. So without further ado, let's go talk to Meredith Hazel. All right, Meredith Hazel, welcome to the Free Georgia Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Is it strange to be sitting in your husband's recording studio?
It is. And he might not want me to tell you this, but he's in the middle of, again, rearranging it and doing new things to it. He can't figure out what he wants to do with it, but I know it'll be awesome once he does.
I've seen it develop over the years.
Yeah. Everything he's done has been cool. I think he gets tired of it and he's like, I need to do something new. So
it sparks new inspiration. It just feels different. It feels like, especially when, because he just started a new show, the Bitcoin Veterans. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I could understand why he would want to change it up, make it look a little different.
Yeah. So we're in the midst of.
Gotcha. Well, for those who don't know, Meredith is married to Shane Hazel, who was our gubernatorial candidate back in 2022. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time up at their house filming for the documentary.
I miss having you around.
I miss coming around. Good. Y'all just live like 20 minutes too far from me.
I know. I kind of felt like we were on a reality show for a while there. It was.
Yeah. Especially when we first met.
You were just like coming and recording us doing things. Weird.
Yeah, it was. I could sense that it was a little awkward and a little weird at first, but we found our groove and it became fine. Yeah. So I've known y'all for 5 years now. Y'all have been 5-ish years. Y'all have been,
wow.
It's 2024.
I didn't know that. That's true. Yeah.
And y'all been homeschooling your children that entire time. Yes. I would love to know, we're focusing on homeschooling and education in general on this podcast this year. And I would love to know, what sparked the decision to homeschool your kids?
So I will not take credit for it at all. It was Shane wanting us to go down that path. Mm-hmm. A little bit of background. I was a public school teacher. So, gosh, I think I taught for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And, I was, in my mind, I became a teacher so that when my kids went to school, we could all go to school together. And it's easy because, don't you remember that going to school, like the teachers' kids would just be in the building all day long. And it's like everyone knew who they were. And that was you too. Yeah.
She was the coach.
So it made sense because I knew I wanted to get married and have a family and have kids. And I was like, that's easy. I like teaching. I like being around kids. I'll have a job that goes with their schedule and it'll work out. But once obviously I got pregnant. I was teaching, and it just worked out that like we went on summer break, and then I had Jackson in the summer. Sorry, my mouth's getting dry.
All good.
Had Jackson in the summer, and then, I take my maternity leave because I'm still in my mind going back to school.
Right.
I mean, not totally at that point. We knew that I was going to stay home. So maternity leave, then sorry, see you later. I'm staying home with the baby now.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just turned into him, it was getting time for like, a lot of people around here do like the preschools at churches. And I'm like, what harm is there in that? Like, it's cute. He'll go to his little preschool class. I'll be home with, our other baby at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking like, that's going to be difficult to like manage a baby and a toddler going to preschool and waking up and having to be somewhere. And I just wasn't in the mood to do that. And I also started to think like it would be really weird for him not to be with us because that's all he's ever known. And I don't want him to be somewhere else. So it turned into like, okay, I'm just going to teach him, we'll do preschool at home. And then, come time for kindergarten, now we have, all three of our children. And I definitely wasn't putting him on a school bus. Like, he couldn't do that. There's no way. I mean, he could have, but I didn't want him to. So in summary, Shane really wanted to homeschool and started kind of planting seeds with me as we hit each milestone. And then I don't know at what point he told me to read the John Taylor Gatto books. He had read them when he was in the Marine Corps. And I do not remember him mentioning that to me, like even before we had kids, but he had read them, and, it kind of sparked in him, like, I don't want my kids doing this and going to public school. So I at some point, I don't remember when, it was probably before our oldest was supposed to start kindergarten, I started reading John Taylor Gatto, and I think I have them all here. I think the first one I read was Dumbing Us Down. And I was just like, oh, well, we're not doing that. Everything I learned about my, career I thought I wanted is just wrong and not what I thought it was. Like, I was in it to just teach kids. Like, I was so blissfully unaware my first year as a teacher that I was supposed to follow any sort of like, obviously there's state standards per state. Like, no one like gave them to me. So granted, I was hired, I was an adult. I should have known to look at my state standards, but I just taught the kids and did what I wanted, and they were just fine. And they passed all their tests and didn't have to, I didn't have to teach to the test. But I'm getting ahead of myself because you just asked me about our own children. So
that's all right. That's all right. That's interesting. So as libertarians, we tend to like some of the stuff that John Taylor Gatto wrote. Definitely mentioned him quite a few times on the campaign trail and just in general speeches with Libertarian Party. What was it about those books or that first book that first like affected you and made you rethink public education?
I would say just kind of how he pointed out, like, the whole point of public education is to create little compliant worker bees that, fall into line, answer questions. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. I mean, not that I don't want my kids to be respectful, but, it was designed so that children became workers and they weren't thinking independently and being creative. And it was like a compliance thing. And I think that's what he, throughout all of his books, because some of them tend to get repetitive, I think.
Yeah.
He definitely, highlights that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. School definitely has a way to crush the creativity out of you. I forget where the study was done. It may have been done here in the States, but they were trying to figure out It was done here in the States. It was a NASA
Oh,
sponsored.
like the intelligence thing or
Yeah, they
brilliance
wanted to
thing?
find out who was like how they could produce more geniuses so that they could work at NASA and like help the
Mhm,
program. And
mhm.
when they started testing kids, it was like 94% of kids were geniuses when they
Mhm.
like prior to school. And then the more schooling they went to, by the time they were out of college, it was like less than 1%.
Yeah, you just, like, smother it out of them.
Yes,
Mhm.
because
It's sad.
genius is all about creativity
It's
and
sad,
like,
yeah.
yeah, figuring out solutions to complex problems. So,
Mhm.
yeah, they're John Taylor Gatto, great author. Highly
Great
recommend
resource. Yeah.
anybody go read some of his books.
Mhm.
All right, a lot of people find the idea of homeschooling super like overwhelming and daunting and something that like they couldn't
Mhm.
possibly do.
Mhm.
Like what has been let's start out with like kindergarten, first, second grade years. Like
Mhm.
what's what would a like regular day look like as far as like schooling go with y'all?
So much shorter than you probably would feel is required. Like, that was really hard for me as a teacher. It's like, we need to be doing something, like, all day long, like, at least till 3 o'clock, right?
Right.
Um, but honestly, when they're little like that, especially kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, the main thing you need to be doing is just, like, reading books
Mm,
constantly. Like, read them to them, have them look at the words as you're reading them.
mhm,
Um, Obviously, at that point, you can start to work on basic math skills and stuff, but it's I think being a product of public education, and probably most people are a product of public education, um, we all think, like, we should be sitting at a desk, we should have worksheets in front of us and textbooks, and,
right.
um, because of that, I think I was a little harder on our firstborn, just I mean, he's like our guinea pig. It's like
Right,
trying everything out with him. Poor little guy, I was like, "You must know all these math facts," but, I mean and then, I learned with the other 2, I'm like, "It'll come. They'll get it. It's
right.
okay." So I would say, like, those early years, reading is the biggest thing, basic math, and, just playing and interacting and
Mm,
including them on chores. I know that sounds weird, but, like, we have to learn how to do chores, like, something as easy as doing the bottom level of the dishwasher. A kid can do that. It's
yeah,
not hard. Um, Easy, lunch preparations, stuff like that, going to the grocery store. I know it can take longer if you're including your kids in
yeah,
preparing a meal, but if you choose a day or 2, like, "Okay, today we're gonna do everyone's helping to make lunch," or, like, "This is your day to help me make lunch," then, um, you'll be surprised how much more your day gets filled up,
hmm,
I would say. So there's so many little charts and things out there floating around. Mostly I see them on Instagram because I,
yeah, me too.
follow homeschool people. But, it'll have a little chart, like, if you are homeschooling, you should be spending 45 minutes if you're, on instruction in kindergarten, like,
Mhm,
per day. That's it.
yeah,
Like, they don't need much more. You're not gonna hold their attention for more than 10 minutes if you're lucky. So if we're
right,
learning how to add numbers 1 through 5 today, like, 10 minutes, play a game, add little cars or erasers or something. Like, it doesn't all have to be worksheets and books and textbooks.
right. Yeah, and one of the a complaint I see on Instagram all the time from people is that, like, school didn't actually prepare them for, like, the real world.
Yeah,
Whereas, like, if you're going grocery shopping and you're learning how to do different chores around the house, like, you're learning how to do real world things that will actually affect you in the
right,
future. And
right,
you're learning responsibility and, like, a whole bunch of different things, how to
right.
interact and how to be out in public and things like that. So, um, I think people definitely even to me, who I'm a proponent, I'm definitely an advocate for homeschooling. The idea of only teaching them for, like, an hour or 2 every day, like, my
Mhm,
initial reaction is like, "That is just doesn't seem long enough."
mhm. There were times too, especially in the beginning, like, once I kind of got a grasp on, "Okay, we shouldn't be doing this all day long," like, Shane's working from home, he comes out of the office and he's like, what are you guys doing? Like, why aren't you doing anything? Like, we are doing something. We're making lunch or we're doing this or whatever. We went outside for 2 hours. Like,
Right.
that's another thing. Like, you need to take your kids outside. They need to play.
Yes.
They need to explore. They need fresh air, sunlight. Like, we did that so much when they were little. Now
Nice.
I kinda have to push them outside. Like, "Okay,
Throw that Xbox
go
outside.
go count all our chickens. Go find them all."
Yeah, I remember. So I got homeschooled for 4th and 5th grade,
Mhm,
and I remember specifically waking up, doing all of my like homework, all of my schoolwork from
mhm, like,
8 to
wanting to
10.
get it done.
Yeah, just powering through it
Yeah,
and then running into the woods and playing like nonstop. And it
yeah,
was the some of the most fun that I've ever had. Like, you learn a lot. Like,
mhm,
we'd do, build little projects, build a boat to like float down the stream and stuff like
mhm,
that. And yeah, there was something about that time that really sticks out to me as far as like my education goes,
mhm,
and that I tended to feel was the most productive and the most enjoyable.
right.
Whereas I hated school, I hated homework, I hated all of that. I didn't want to sit still. Um, I
Yep.
don't think like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I know the American school system is designed based on the Prussian model that
Yes.
is, like what you were saying,
Mhm.
just
That's what
trying
God
to get people
mentions
to
at a
be,
time. Yeah.
yep, follow the leader kind of thing. Um, there are a lot of I was put on Adderall because
Mhm.
I supposedly had ADD, ADHD, one of those things.
Everybody in the world. I think we all have some form of it, but
Well, I guess my question is like, do you having kids and having taught them for so long,
Mhm.
are children designed to be sitting at a desk learning all day?
Oh, no. No, I
No.
don't think so. I think some can.
Yeah.
I think just looking back, I think I did it. Like, I was like, "Little miss, I wanna be a teacher." So I just loved everything about it.
Yeah.
I see that in my daughter. I feel like if we sent her to school, she would just probably shine and, like, be really good at it and the whole, aspect and the motions of school. But I think the boys would just be miserable
Mm,
because they do not sit still all day long, and um, they're not content to sit and do the same thing for more,
mhm.
more than, like, an hour unless it's, like, they're an Xbox game or something, if we're being honest. But, I mean, ho honestly, they'll go outside and, get lost in that too.
Mhm.
But, I do think some kids can adapt to it, but
Mm,
I don't think it's a good thing.
mm.
I think
Interesting.
I think we're not made to to sit all day long at a
Right.
desk.
Yeah, I
Nope.
agree. Even when I do it now, it
Yeah,
drives me nuts.
yeah, like, I have to get up after, like,
Yes.
every hour and at least go walk down the hallway, go get a drink, go do something,
Yeah.
step outside with the dogs.
Yeah.
Like, Shane sets an alarm, I think,
Oh, wow.
every hour on the hour, and he gets up and, he'll come out of the room, or I
Mhm.
think he'll do, like, push-ups or something.
Nice.
Sure he
Yeah,
wants me telling you that, but
that's a good way to do it. Um, how have you so, like, with public school, there's a lot of standardized tests, there's a lot of, like,
yeah,
markers that you have to pass in order to graduate to the next level.
we have
What
that too.
what kind of what kind of tests, what kind of markers, like, how do you track progress over time?
Um, so in Georgia, it's gonna vary by state, but in Georgia, starting in 3rd grade, you have to do I think they call it a nationally normed or nationally standardized test, and they give you there's a list of them on, the Georgia Home Education Association website or something like that. It's also probably on the website where you do your declaration of intent, where you fill that out each year to say, we're homeschooling, these are the kids, this is where our home, um, county is, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But yes, there's a list that you can choose what test you want to give your child, and it's every 3 years starting in 3rd grade. So, um you probably, at some point in your education, took, like, the Iowa test of basic skills. Are you familiar with that one? That's on the list. It's a pretty common one that is, I'm sure many people have heard of, or their child has done it. Um, what is the one we did? The California Achievement Test is another one. And there's a really easy option to just do it online. And basically you order it and they take the test. And if I'm being honest, they all did really well on it. Like they've all taken it in 3rd grade, and Jackson has since taken a second one because he's in 7th grade this year. So I don't make a big deal about it. I'm not expecting them to do anything. If they don't want to see their scores, they don't have to see their scores. They were interested just to know. But and honestly, in Georgia, you have to take these tests and kind of just keep them in your own personal files. I don't have to turn them in. I just have to have done them.
That's so interesting. So Georgia,
you just have to pay the money and do them, and then hold on to them.
Interesting. So what is the government involvement like? Because from that, it doesn't sound like it's like a heavy-handed involvement.
Georgia is actually pretty lenient and pretty good. I don't know which states are the difficult ones. They're definitely out there. In Georgia, you file the declaration of intent, and you have the full calendar year to finish your schooling. So like I usually date it July 1st through August 31st of the following year. So it's the full year. What else do you have to do? I think the hours, it says you will do instruction like 4.5 hours a day. But again, that can encompass things like creating a budget, going to the grocery store, working on a small business that you're creating, the kids are doing, like that sort of thing. Reading, like it can encompass so many things, not just sitting down with, a textbook and like your core subjects and that. And then the state testing, or I'm sorry, the national testing every 3 years, starting in 3rd grade. And then you're just supposed to kind of create like a portfolio type thing at the end of the year, or like I forget what they call it, an academic achievement like a progress report. Because that's another thing. I've never really graded the kids. Like I'm to the point now with our oldest that he's in middle school. So like the math curriculum he's using, I can grade that. But like when they're younger, it's not like they're taking, I'm not anyway. I'm not giving them like tests every 2 weeks or anything like that. So, and the beautiful thing about homeschooling is like, if they're not getting it, then that we don't move on. So it's not like it's just I'm waiting till they achieve understanding and can do all the things that need to be done before we move on. So if that means they have an A, then I guess they all have A's, because like I'm not going to let them fail at something if it's going to build on, whatever else they do need to learn.
Right. So where does that like curriculum or whatever come from? Like how did you determine what when?
I kind of did it on my own. There are so many resources out there that, I mean, especially in Georgia, if you want to follow something on the Georgia home education website, I'm sure they have just things laid out beautifully for you. You can do, this for language arts, this for math, this for writing. Because I am aware of, like what standards kids are supposed to kind of do in each grade level. I just found a curriculum that I like and that works well for them. And I just incorporate other things with it. If we're studying something in history or science and I find a cool YouTube video or a documentary, then we include that with it. For the most part, I do use kind of like 1 or 2 curriculums year after year. You can fall into the habit of like wanting to try new things all the time. And I think I did that a little bit at the beginning, but I've learned that like, if it's working, we need to just chug along and continue and do the next grade level and everything. So
I gotcha.
Yeah. Another good resource for finding curriculum is, I think it's called Kathy Duffy Reviews. And she just has lists of it divided by subject matter, grade level, all that sort of thing, and it'll link directly to all these different curriculums, and it'll be
Hmm.
anything from like secular things to religious things as well.
Gotcha.
There's
Interesting.
there's different there too, because you'll have people that don't want any kind of religious content in their curriculum, and then you'll have people that do. So
Right. Yeah, for sure. Um, another big thing that people tend to be worried about with homeschooling kids is socializing them. So how
I
do
knew
you
you
go
were gonna
about
say that.
yeah, how do you go about doing that?
Well, you've met my kids. You think they're social?
Yes.
um, I think socialization and kids being able to interact with others is, I don't wanna, like, toot our own horns here, but I think it has a lot to do with the parents, because you're gonna have a lot of different kinds of parents that homeschool or that are in public school, and, we just always encourage them to interact and to ask questions, and we don't, if we have company over, we don't shoo them away immediately. We do at some points, maybe like, "Okay, you don't have to be here the whole time." Um, but yeah, I think first and foremost, it has a lot to do with the parents.
Mhm.
And then when they were little, we did do a lot more, like, going outside the house and, like, going to library events and story times and things like that. Little A lot of times, like, through the Parks and Rec for your county, there'll be camps or, um, things you can find. Co-ops are a big thing. We never really joined a co-op because I didn't it felt too much like being tied down to, sometimes it's a specific curriculum, and, like, it was like, "I don't wanna do that," or required me to, like, prepare a lesson or 2 and, like, teach other kids, and I was like, I'm done teaching other kids for the most part. I really just prefer my own at this point. I cannot imagine going back to a classroom setting right now or ever." Um So, yeah, we tried and this was when we lived in Cummings, so we were, closer to a lot of
Mm,
things and a lot of events. The kids have done jujitsu since they were all 3 and 4 years old. They have grown up in several gyms.
yeah.
We're at a new one now, and honestly, they go to the kids' classes, they love them, and they have friends in there and everything, but because they started so young, they're honestly pretty good, and they are
Mm,
mature, and they can handle, um, doing some more advanced things, so they kinda tried out staying at some adult classes, and they do that too, and the adults, honestly, I can't tell you how many of them, and even the coach was like, "I was kinda nervous at first to let them do this because they're kids." I mean, Sawyer's 9,
yeah.
um, but he was like, "They're so good, and they just work together, and" Um, they get to experience jujitsu with kids and people their own size, but then they go up to the adult class and they're studying under like 3 or 4 different black belts, and, the boys are getting bigger and they can roll with some of the adults that are in there, so I think they're plenty socialized.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
That was always a confusing one for me, like,
yeah,
I said I was homeschooled for a couple of years, and I didn't feel like I missed out on
yeah,
anything. Like, we
yeah,
had when my neighbor came home from school, we'd go play in the woods,
yeah.
like
Well, and I can't tell you how many times, like, their cousin who's in middle school as well would be like, "Oh, I wish I was homeschooled."
Yeah,
I don't know that he does totally wish that. I think he thinks like, "Oh, they get to just, like, sleep till whenever they want and
right,
then do some work and then they're done." But,
right.
um, also, they don't really know what they're missing because 'cause
Mm,
they've never experienced it. I mean, the only school they've really ever seen is on a TV show or
right.
a movie, and usually that's pretty, exaggerated and not as realistic as it is. But, I mean, think about when you were in public school, like, I didn't really have a whole lot of time to talk to anybody.
Mm,
I mean, I know that it's probably a little different now because I think all kids have cell phones and everything, and they're probably texting all day long while they're in school, but, I mean, I remember high school being, I had to get to my locker and go to class, like, I didn't have time to even hardly go to the bathroom if I wanted to. I had to bolt.
So you weren't a troublemaker.
I
'Cause
was not
I
a
had plenty of
troublemaker,
time to do
no.
whatever I wanted.
Maybe. Maybe I could have, and I just didn't want to because
Yeah,
I needed to get the class.
How many times did you get detention in your life?
Once because I cheated.
Oh, okay. I got
Yeah.
suspended because I cheated.
Yeah. I think it was a detention situation.
Okay, cool.
Remember, maybe this was a thing when you were in school, like accelerated reader tests?
That sounds right. Yes.
So, it was middle school and we had you had to take so many tests or, like, earn so many points a semester,
Okay.
and somebody got the answers to The Hobbit, which was, like, a huge point maker because it's a long book.
Huge book.
So, I think it was, like, 40 of us all took the Hobbit test, and the librarian was like, "Only 2 of you even checked out this book." And, like, this was before, I feel like nowadays kids can be like, "I got it on Amazon," or, like, "We went to the"
Right.
I mean, granted, I could have had my own copy of The Hobbit, so she gave us all a chance to, like, retake a new test, and we all, I mean, failed.
Failed miserably.
So and I still haven't read The Hobbit to this day.
It's such a good book,
I have it
Meredith.
on the shelf.
Goodness gracious.
I'm intending to read it, I just have not.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I cheated in
I
the
remember
Hobbit test
reading that.
in, like, 7th grade,
Interesting.
along with, like, 40 other kids.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, it was
Yeah.
like a group in trouble situation.
Same, I mean,
Yeah, I was like,
so
"There's
funny.
comfort in numbers."
Yeah, ours was a group of 5 that got
Mhm.
suspended together because we all cheated together.
Mhm.
It was a take-home test, and they said, "Don't do it with your classmates," and we just did it with our classmates anyway.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But it's a take-home test.
Yeah,
Whatever.
what were they expecting?
Yeah. All right, before we wrap up,
Okay.
if you could offer, like, one piece of advice for a parent who's, like, on the fence about starting homeschooling, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, I would say to just trust your instincts. If you think that is this like they're brand new to school in general or they're gonna pull their kid out?
Either one.
Either one. Okay. Yeah, trust your gut. If it I feel like if it's on your radar, it's there for a reason,
Mm,
and especially in a situation where you're thinking, "I wanna pull my kid out of public or even private school,"
mhm,
um, there's a reason you're feeling that way and go with it. And then when you do, take some time to realize that you are not doing school at home. You're not sitting in the desk for hours on end. You're not getting a textbook. You're not having worksheets. It's what is called unschooling. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of that. We've done an
Um,
episode on it.
that's when you need to just include your child in life
Mm,
and also make it a purpose to get outside.
mhm,
And if it takes, a couple months, some people I think do it for like a year. And they'll travel, they'll just kind of approach it more as like a project thing, like, spring's coming, that let's design and build a garden, and you're gonna do and help me with every part of this. Um, I would say just don't be afraid to make it look like the complete opposite of what you grew up doing in your education.
I love that.
Because I've had to really, especially as the kids have gotten older, um, in my mind, like, we're supposed to be doing math and language arts and science and social studies and, all the things, but they just can't. They can't do that every day, all day long, and if it turns into, a couple hours a week of doing a subject matter or a topic, and then, they get to go work on creating their products for their small business that they go to markets for or that they have in a store here in our city. Like, that's important too. Like, you've signed a contract with that store owner, like, you need to be on top of like keeping your supplies stocked and keeping track of your profits and your losses and buying your supplies and everything. So I've especially with that this year, I've learned that it's okay if like we take 2 days a week to focus on what they're interested in and what they need to accomplish
I love it.
in their little work life now too.
That's awesome. That is
So
fantastic. Well, yeah, I would love to have you back on the show because you've been doing this for a while, and I would like to dive deeper into it. Unfortunately, I only have 30 minutes today, so
that works. Is
awesome.
that your dog or my dog? I can't tell.
I think that's yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Is it the new one?
Sorry. Probably.
I didn't even hear it, so you're all good.
Yes.
Well, Meredith, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So there you go. Homeschooling, like I've said over the last few episodes, is going to be a big part of the show for 2024, for this year. We're going to do a whole bunch of shows on homeschooling specifically. We're going to try to build up a base, like a resource on the website on lpgeorgia.com so that you can hop on there and learn all about different aspects of homeschooling, different aspects of educating your children. Yeah, very, very, very excited about that. So hopefully we'll have Meredith back on in the future and have some more homeschooling experts and people who are experienced with it and people who have gone through it sometime in the future. So that'll be it for today, y'all. Go follow us, LP Georgia, on Twitter, Libertarian Party of Georgia on Instagram, and go hit up our website at LP Georgia and get on that Liberty Watch. Tune in to Liberty Libations on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. and come back each week, Monday nights, 8 p.m. for more Free Georgia podcasts. We'll see you then.